There's a lot of things I cannot control, but I love that you and I are trying really hard to try to help people figure out how to have a civil dialogue with the people that you don't necessarily agree with.
My name is Linda Lorelle, and I'm asking you to have the courage to listen with an open mind to all of our voices, because our voices matter. Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle, and this is Our Voices Matter podcast. It's been a while since we've connected. This is my first podcast since the election, and the first one since the Trump administration has been in office for the second time. As I'm recording this, it is Friday, February 21st. So we are just over 30 days into the new administration. And like many of you, I am trying to catch my breath and make sense of it all. You might recall that the last several podcasts have been focused on civil dialogues, the initiative that my friend Jean Becker and I started, launched in February of 2024, just actually 1 year ago, as the election season was really heating up. Jean is the former chief of staff to President George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, as we call him, and a dear friend. Together, we decided to do something to try and help bring the country together, helping people talk about difficult issues in a way that does not demonize, but is focused on nuance and understanding and solutions to problems. So that's kind of the nutshell of what Civil Dialogues is all about. Please go to our website, civildialogues.us, to learn more about the backstory and see all of the events that we've done to date. We've got a big new one coming up, which we're going to tease in the podcast that you're about to watch or listen to. Just want you to know that we are continuing to focus on civil dialogues here on Our Voices Matter. It's literally part of our core mission, which is reminding us of our common humanity. It's why we started the podcast in the first place. Civil Dialogues is an extension of that. And I personally cannot think of anything more important for me to be spending my time on than this. I hope you will continue to watch and listen and spread the word. And so now here's my conversation with my good friend, Jean Becker. Hello, my friend. It's great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here with you this morning, Linda Lorelle. I love that we've become best friends. I love it.
I know. All those, I guess it was almost 2.5 years ago, right before the midterms, when we decided to embark upon civil dialogues. We've completed our first year during the election year, during 2024. Our last event was a couple of weeks after the election on November 18th. Did that one at the Becker Institute in Houston. So since then, a whole hell of a lot has happened, especially in the last 30 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So what are you thinking? What's top of mind for you right now?
Well, I think everybody in the country, no matter what your politics are, I think everybody's just sort of nervous about how divisive our country and our politics have become. I just had breakfast with a friend who told me that she has family members who politically disagree on everything. And she had a big fight with her son this week. And I think that's going on in almost every family in America or offices in America. And the thing, Linda, civil dialogues is more important than ever. I need it as much as anybody else. One of the things my friend and I talked about at breakfast is I once had someone who was a big supporter of President Trump say to me, if you don't watch Fox News, you don't know the truth. But I also know people who say to people who watch Fox News, if you watch Fox News, you've been brainwashed. Mm. Well, that is not civil dialogue. And
No.
that is, there's a lot of things I cannot control, but I love that you and I are trying really hard to try to help people figure out how to have a civil dialogue with the people that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah. So you touched upon something that I think is so critical to everything that's going on, and that is the how we get our information and where we get it, because it's controlling everything.
Right.
It's controlling everything, and you and I have some plans. I'm not going to go into them right now, so this is definitely a major tease for everybody who's watching and listening. But we've got some plans to do one or two or more civil dialogues around information and media and journalism and the future. And so you will definitely want to stay tuned and, stay connected with us so we can bring you up to date on what that's going to look like. For me, what's top of mind, as you know, Jean, last night we were together at the Presidential Salute here in Houston, which is an annual event that the George and Barbara Bush Presidential Library Foundation puts on every year. And last night, as I was listening to Jim Nance and Pierce Bush on stage talk about 41, the stories, the videos that were shared, the whole time I kept thinking, I want that America back. And by that, I mean, the conversation that was had on stage last night was about 41's character. And there was a lot of time talking about the relationship between President George Herbert Walker Bush and President Bill Clinton. And you and I have already done a civil dialogue about that incredible partnership and relationship and friendship that came out of a very bitter election in which, of course, Clinton beat Bush, and then they became, the closest of friends. How did that happen is what we explored in that particular civil dialogue. And for those of you who were not able to be at the Clinton Library when we did that, please go to our website and you can watch it. It was quite remarkable to hear how all of that happened. And last night, as I was hearing Jim talk about that, because he was a firsthand witness to that relationship, as of course you were, and many others. But I just kept thinking, I want that America back. I want us to be able to remember that we're worthy of being who we are, and that our humanity matters, and that character matters.
Character matters.
It does. And I miss that, and I want it back.
Well, and as you know, Linda, I wrote a book called Character Matters.
Yes, you did.
About President Bush. It came out last April, and it's essays written by President Bush's, friends, peers, staff, about his character. And boy, the timing of this book, it'll be a year, April 1st, since this book came out. And I'm still traveling the country talking about the book because I get so many invitations. I'm talking to 1,500 Missouri School Board Association members in June. Next fall, I'm talking to the Virginia State School Board Association. People are so interested in this book right now. And when the time is right, I'm going to read one short paragraph from it, but I want to do that when we talk about our next event. But yeah, character really does matter.
It does. And so, so I'm glad you mentioned our next event and Missouri, because we're super, super excited that we're doing our first civil dialogues in the middle of the country in St. Louis, Missouri. You are from, tell people where you're from.
I'm from a little bitty town called Martinsburg, Missouri, population 311. It's about 2 hours west of St. Louis. My dad was a farmer. But I'm a Missouri native, huge St. Louis Cardinal fan. So it's going to be very, very fun to be in St. Louis on March 6th. I just can't wait.
So my Missouri roots are because of the University of Missouri School of Journalism in Columbia, Missouri, where we both went to journalism school, not at the same time. different years, different disciplines, you in print, I in broadcast. But we both have major obvious connections and love for the University of Missouri. And we're excited because the Kinder Institute on Constitutional Democracy, which is at the University of Missouri in Columbia, is partnering with us on this event, along with Missouri Humanities. The Civil Dialogues will be March 6th in St. Louis. The title is, are you ready for it? The People, the President, and the Constitution. Your questions answered. Oh, we're just going to have a little bitty conversation.
I think there's about 100 million people who would like to tune into this conversation because they have so many questions.
So we're going to be at the Zach Theater in St. Louis on that date. Again, it's Thursday, March 6th in the evening, but we're also live streaming. So for everybody all over the country, you will be able to tune in. Okay. So we'll have all the information on our website. You can register and join us. So I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have. So let me just tell you real quickly who the panelists are. So Jay Sexton, who is the director of the Kinder Institute on Constitutional Democracy. He is incredible. Kathy Keeley is a Missouri journalism professor. It's got all kinds of credentials. I'm not going to read them all. Stephen Davis is a senior legal fellow, and he's a member of the Federalist Society. And Abby Ramirez is a senior majoring in journalism and constitutional democracy at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. So we're going to have a much younger person's perspective, which I think is really, really important for this conversation. So, Jean, what are you looking forward to about this?
Well, I hope no one in the audience has any questions because I have 75 questions to ask. I think we'll learn a lot. I think it's going to be a wonderful conversation. And one of the things that you and I have gotten better at is to make sure our panels on all these events have both points of view, that it's not all people who are left of center or not all people who are right of center. It's part of civil dialogue. Right. And I think this session will just be really good for everybody who's either in the room or on live stream, right, just to hear the conversation about where we are right now and try to get a grip on understanding what's going on in Washington.
Well, so often in the last few weeks, we've heard many people say we're in a constitutional crisis. Well, what is a constitutional crisis?
Yes,
Are we really in one? And what is it? What does it? Would it look like? How would we be able to respond to it? Anyway, they're like a million questions, and I love the fact. I love our panel. I think we're going to have multiple perspectives reflected on the panel. And we've also made a concerted effort to ensure that the audience is also reflective of multiple diverse viewpoints. When Jean and I started this little project of ours, we literally have been making it up as we go along, learning from our mistakes, learning, what works, what doesn't, what could we have done better, et cetera. And so, again, super excited to be in the middle of the country for the first time with this, with our format. And speaking of our format, one of the things that is the highlight of what we do is that we always begin every event with some historical perspective. And that always falls to you, my friend, given your time in the White House and in the Bush presidency and your role as a former journalist at USA Today. So all those chops come to bear when it's time for us to put some historical perspective into the conversation as we frame what we're going to talk about. So give our audience a little bit of a tease of what they can expect from a historical perspective on this event that's coming up.
Well, I'm still working on it. I'll be honest. I have a lot in my head, but I've done a little bit of research and have picked a couple of minds. What's interesting to me is there are a couple of former presidents who some people think definitely challenged the Constitution. And you may be surprised who they are. One is Abraham Lincoln. some of the things he did before and during the Civil War to keep the Union together. And I'm not going to say any more, but some people feel Abraham Lincoln definitely challenged the Constitution at times. But the biggest person the most recent person was FDR. And because when FDR, he didn't move near as rapidly as the current president did, but when he became president in 1932, we were in the midst of the Great Depression, and he moved like lightning speed to put into place the New Deal. And one of the things that and a lot of it he did by executive order, which we'll go into more detail on March 6th. What is executive orders can be very controversial. But one of the things FDR actually toyed with doing was increasing the size of the Supreme Court to 15, because then he would have been able to appoint 6 new members and he would win all the cases. Wow. Well, our 3 branches of government worked. He wasn't allowed to do that. It would have been unconstitutional for him to do that. So our wonderful 3 branches of government work. So that's just sort of a brief little tidbits that I've been playing with. But of course, I am going to read something from Character Matters, because the president, who of course I know best, is President Bush. I really just want to read one line from his inaugural address, which was amazing. But he was very full of hope and very optimistic about our country. But one of the biggest points of his inaugural address in 1989 is we had to work together. Mm-hmm. We had to work as one people. And he said, I take as my guide the hope of a saint. And at one point, I knew the saint who said this. It might have been St. Francis of Assisi. In crucial things, unity. In important things, diversity. In all things, generosity. And I do think those are 3 words that are missing right now from our national conversation. Unity, diversity, and generosity. I know.
Well, yeah. So, okay. So diversity is not missing from the conversation. It's just not being talked about in the way that President Bush meant it.
It's just right.
It's become a dirty word, and which is sad.
It is. We need to listen to him, and I would encourage everyone to read his inaugural address. Mm-hmm. And that sort of segues into one last thing I'm going to read you. Is the historian John Meacham gave an unbelievable eulogy at his funeral. And this is what he said. It was and is the most American of creeds. Abraham Lincoln's better angels of our nature, and George H.W. Bush's 1,000 points of light. They are companion verses in America's national hymn. For Lincoln and Bush both called on us to choose the right over the convenient, to hope rather than to fear, to heed not our worst impulses, but our best instincts. And Linda, as you said in the beginning, you want back the America we had then. Nothing sums up that America better than that. What worries me is I feel like we've gone from Character Matters. Somebody sent me this book as a gift. And for those of you who are listening, I'm going to have to watch my language. Someone sent me a book called OMG WTF. What does the Constitution actually say? And I am reading it. I'm working on reading it, and I'm learning a lot. But I just think there's so much confusion over our Constitution right now. Mm-hmm. And we are a constitutional democracy. So,
well, I think we picked the right topic to begin 2025. I think people have a ton of questions, a lot of confusion. There's a lot of angst. There are a lot of people who are frankly terrified about where we are, and I'm one of them. So, some days are good, some days are not so good. So the more we can try to understand and build community around how we feel, help us understand what's going on, I think the better off we'll be, and hopefully offer some tools for people like your friend who you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, who's having a very difficult time just talking with members of her family, because they're on opposing sides of what is going on in the country right now.
Well, that's why I love that we started civil dialogues, and Linda and I have laughed that for those of you who are old enough to know what I'm saying, there was a line from a movie that I don't think I ever saw that starred Judy Garland and Mickey.
Rooney.
Thank
Rooney.
you. What's his last name?
Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney. Yes, I need more coffee this morning. Julie Garland and Mickey Rooney, and they decide to put a show on, and they have no idea what they're doing. And to some extent, Linda and I are Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. Let's put on a show.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. But I love that we're doing this, and I think, I hope by the time we're done with civil dialogues, we've reached every person in America.
Yeah, I hope so too. We want to partner with as many organizations as we can and travel the country having these important conversations and building this community. So again, our event is coming up on Thursday, March 6th at the Zach Theater in St. Louis. So if you're in the St. Louis area, please come to the event. And if you're not, go to our website and find the link to everything, and you can register and watch us on the live stream. So, Jean, my friend, I always feel better after talking with you.
Oh, me too.
I look forward to our event coming up and to our next podcast. Oh, one more thing, everybody. After the event, we are going to be doing a deeper dive with one or two of the guests from the panel. And turning that into a podcast. So the conversation will continue in a post-event podcast, which of course we will promote and let you know when we're going to have that up online for you. So lots of good stuff going on, and just hang in there, everybody. Hang in there. We're going to get through this.
We're going to get through this. Absolutely. If President Bush were here, he used to say this all the time. If we can survive the Great Depression, World War II, the 60s, we can survive anything. And then he would always end the conversation with that statement with, the only reason I didn't bring up the Civil War is because I wasn't born then. But he said, we can survive anything. And I remind myself of that all the time.
Yes. And we shall do that together. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me crash your podcast.
Anytime. I do hope you'll be able to join us on March 6th, either in person or online. These are tough times that we're living in right now. And I know I personally am struggling and looking for ways to maintain my positivity. Doing this podcast and civil dialogues is a huge part of that. I'd love to know what you're doing to maintain your sense of peace and normalcy. Please feel free to reach out on our website or on Substack and let me know what you're thinking and feeling, and would love for you to share some of your tips with me. And I will be certainly sharing some of mine with you as we together navigate this new landscape here in the United States of America. Thank you so much for being a valued member of the Our Voices Matter community, and I can't wait to see you next time. In the meantime, please be kind to yourself and others.